The next thing I'd like to do is to do a histogram of some underlying quantities in the population in time. This is different. We are looking at a situation where we have value changing with time and adding them into this histogram, which summarizes over time what fraction of the cases fell within certain bin categories for, say, the number of susceptibles. Here, this next one, we want to summarize the state of the population at a given time in terms of its empirical distribution of some quantity, let's say income. Okay? Okay, so we're going to use the same sort of objects. We're going to use a histogram data object, and we'll say empirical distribution of income. Okay? So a histogram data object. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to require us to do something a little bit different. When I was using this, I thought, should I expose you to this? And the thought occurred to me that it might be a little bit painful, but it's going to allow us to be with you while you're experiencing this pain. Be home while you're experiencing this pain. Allow you to accompany you on this little journey. So I'd like with you, and we'll go through this together. Okay? It's actually not too bad. In fact, some people like it, but it's gonna show a principle. It's gonna illustrate a principle, and it's gonna illustrate some practical skills as well. Okay, so we have this histogram data. The question is, when does it populate this? Suppose we populate this every 10 minutes, every 10 days, to display a new gram of the population. How could we do that? What sort of construct could we, if we looked at it, say on a periodic system, would wake us up and do called begins with an E, ends with E, there's a V in the middle. An event. Thank you. So it's an event. An event would allow us to sort of periodically do something, like reporting data, printing out, database, file. Those are all good things an event to do. But in this case, I thought we'd do something a little bit different to weave this in. So we could well do this with an event, but I think I'm going to do it with a button. I'm going to show you how you can add a button. So you can press this button and it will do something for you. Maybe it's put up a file, maybe it's a database. In this case, can we update this sort of histogram data? So, ladies and gentlemen, let us add a button. Where would I add a button? From where would I add a button? In the controls. So I can go down to button here, and I can do, call it button compute income histogram, something like that. Okay? When we press this button, something is going to happen. Now, we're gonna update the histogram. Let's go back and look at this histogram data object. You'll notice that we could specify value here, but it seems to be geared very much towards like collecting data over time, update data automatically, for example, and sampling from this value of information. That worked really well for above, where we were sampling like the number of susceptible, and we could do it for lots of things, where we're sampling over time. But here it doesn't really make sense. Instead, we want to put all the data in here at one point in time, putting in successive values from the population for income. We don't want to sample a given value over time. Instead we want to, or a given way of getting the value over time. Instead, we want to populate this thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this object, and I'd like you to pay attention to this, in this histogram object, in this case, we're not going to have it update automatically. We're gonna actually just, when we press that button, we're gonna do the necessary work. We're gonna do the right thing. Okay? So we turn this off and say do not update automatically. Update data automatically. Okay? So basically, no thanks. Thanks very much. We'll do it ourselves. Thanks. So this is still going to be our point where we put the data. But when we press this button, by the way, maybe we want to give a label to the button like update income histogram or something like that, right? Now for the action for this button, really I would put this in a method of a function, call it function, so really way it should be better done, but I'll put it here for you just to see, okay? The action here will be to, first of all, we may press the button several times, so I want to clear out everything in this histogram, okay? So the empirical distribution of income, I want to, oh, I misspelled it. It should be income with a, oh, actually, I want to show you something about any logic, just so you could see how this is done. I did misspell it, and I'll actually put it in with the misspelling for now. But then I want to say reset. I want to get all the data out of it. So I might press this button at several points, and I want to get rid of all the old data. So I reset this thing that holds the histogram, okay? Okay? Okay, so that's the first thing. And then I want to go through, where is the data going to come from? Riddle me this, folks. Where, this histogram, we want it to hold data on we want to show a histogram of income in the population. Where is each data point going to come from that contributes to that histogram? What information does it need to compute a histogram of income? It needs information on the income of each person in the population. We have to give it income on each person in the population, and it will compute for us the histogram. That's great. More than Excel can easily do for you, the built-in features. But we have to give it each person's income in the population. How are we going to get the income of each person in the population? Ladies and gentlemen, here comes the pain. So how are we going to get the distribution for each person in the population? This isn't too bad. I mean, some of us actually like this sort of thing. So there's a thing called a for loop. We're trying to advise any logic on ways to eliminate for loops from this sort of interface. But for now, you got to have it for each person in the population. For each person, call it P in the population within, in other words, in this people, we're going to add their data to the histogram. Okay, if I have a person P, how do I get their income? P, if I have a reference to a person P, if I had a reference called item, how would I get their income? If I had a reference to them called item, how would I get their population? Item dot income, to get their income. So if I have a reference called P, I could call this item. If you want, I could call it item. How many people prefer me to call it item? How many people like P per person? Okay, we're going to keep it as P. So how would I get their income? P dot income. Okay, that's their income. And now I want to give that income. I want to tell the histogram about that income. So I'm going to say empirical distribution of income, and I need to do add in that person's income. By add, I mean just sort of take it into account. Okay, so this is the code here. I'll paste it into a window which is larger here. Okay, so I don't want to paste it into that. That's my YouTube stuff. Okay, so let me just boom. This is what I had. By the way, notice I misspelled income. I'll go back and show you how any logic you can correct that early facility.
But we can spell it.
Yes, well, please be encouraged to spell it correctly. Okay. So empirical distribution of income. So first we have to reset this thing, and then for each person income, we have to tell this histogram data about that person's income. It can't do its job without knowing about the income of everyone in the population. So we have to tell it about each person's income. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the great pain to a truncated today. And I'm sorry to have to do that here. But it's a good principle that sometimes a little bit of code here looping over the population and doing something, it's actually, unfortunately, it's state of the art, it's essential to do the job. Okay, who needs a TA? Who needs a TA? Okay, so where is this code going? It's going in the button. It's going in here in this button. Okay, when I press that button. Okay. Okay. So again, I'll go back to this. This is what you have to do. Okay. So for each, what this is saying is, for each person in this entire population called people, I'm going to call that person P. Each person in turn, I'm going to call P, one after the other. Person 1, person 0, call him P, and do this thing for them. Person 1, call him P, do this add for them. Person 2, call him P, and do this add for them. And so for each person, I take their income and I add it into the empirical distribution data. Does that make sense to people? Does that make sense? Okay, so I need to tell it about that. After all, folks, the reason I have to do this here, and that I didn't have to do it before, is that this distribution is summarizing the state of the distribution of income in the population at a given point in time. That previous one was summarizing it over time, so we could sort of just tell it, oh, just sample from the number of susceptibles over time. And that avoided us having to do this, because it just said, how many susceptibles now? Just add it to its histogram. A bit later, how many susceptibles now? Add it to its histogram. Here, at a given point in time, we're going over each person in the population and adding them in to be considered for the histogram. Does that make sense? Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, there's just one further thing we need. What is it? So we have the histogram data here, and we have the thing to update it. What do we still need? We need the graph of it, yeah, the histogram itself. So here we are, and it's under analysis again, and this is the chart, okay? And so let's drag this chart, and what we'll do here is we'll say add histogram data, and we'll say this is the income, and we're going to say histogram empirical distribution. Ooh, no, not that one. What do we call the other one? Let's go see. Empirical distribution of income is what we call that. So so we call it empirical distribution of income. Okay. Are people okay with that? People okay with that? Okay, so in other words, we add in a histogram and we said empirical distribution of income. The name of the, oh, thank you. Let's call the chart, let's call it histogram empirical distribution of income. And I'm still sticking to this. Well, I'll say income with an O for this one. I'll correct it. Okay. So that would, oh, excuse me. I did that for the title. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Sorry, folks. I should have said this would be income. The really what I meant to do it is for the name here. Sorry. Oh man. Histogram empirical distribution. This is something that the AnyLogic folks just have got to get right. You can't cut and paste into these name fields, and it's frankly silly. So we need to be able to okay, I'm silly. So I thought that was the case, but apparently it must have cleared the clipboard. So I shouldn't criticize that. There is a place where you can't paste in, but it's not there. Okay. So folks, we've just added this in. Let's press build and see if there's a problem. Mine built okay, but who needs a TA help here? Who needs TA help? Okay, so what we've just done is, what have we just done? We've just defined a data structure that holds things, can compute histograms. We've updated it so when you press this button, it updates that data structure accordingly, and then we've made a chart which depends on that data structure. Let's go run this, and we'll see some issues which still have to be fixed up. Okay, who needs a TA right now? I know I just did quite a bit, so who needs a TA? Okay, so is this the distribution of income? Is this one? No, this one's updating over time. This one hasn't yet been computed. Should we press this button? Okay. So what happens? Do we see a histogram here? Okay, so 1 bar. So what's going on here? This is between 0 and 500,000. This is somewhere out here in the multi-millions. So what's going on here? What do you think's going on here? Well, it's not showing the histogram very effectively. In short, folks, it's chosen poor bins. It's chosen bins, at least that don't accord with our interests. So ladies and gentlemen, where would we go to define the bins? Does anyone remember? Fortunately, we can define the bins. Where do we do that? Does anyone remember? Well, it turns out it's in the histogram data structure. It's in the histogram data structure. So if we click on this histogram here, we can actually tell it whether to automatically derive the bins or to use fixed bins. We're going to tell it to use fixed bins, okay? And we're going to tell it to use more bins. Let's say, well, we have about is it 1,000 people in this model or 10,000? I think it's 10,000. So we'll use 50 bins here. And for each bin, well, the bins will go from 0 to, well, realistically, I mean, most people have an income, say, well below 200,000. So maybe we'll do to 200,000. What do you think? Okay, thank you, Anmani. Yeah. So each bin is of width $4,000, or yeah, $4,000. Okay. Should we run it or not? Sorry? Okay. Okay. So now we've adjusted the bin sizes. Ladies and gentlemen, there we go. So I've adjusted to go from 0, $200,000, by increments of $4,000, and now we're updating the distribution, the income histogram when we press this button. If we press this button again, nothing will change because it's not changing over time, but it actually is recomputing it, recollecting the information. So if it were changing over time, that would be another matter. Meanwhile, this graph above, of course, is changing over time. So here we have it updating over time. This one is static because no one's income is changing. Does that make sense to people? Okay. So, of course, yes? Okay, that's a good question. It's not automatically updated every time, but I think when the underlying, well, here, let's go. Let's try something. Like what would cause it to update? Like how can we test that sort of fact? So I believe in this case, because the underlying data is updated, that the graph is updated automatically. But we could evolve people's incomes if you wanted to see that. So, well, sure. Okay, this is a great little exercise. Okay, folks, I'm going to create a button that's double everyone's income. How would I create a button? You tell me how to do this. We have all the information needed to do this. How do I create a button to double everyone's income in the model? Good. So go to control, go to controls, which are further down, drag in button, okay? Yeah. Okay. I'll call it a button double incomes. Okay. And what will be the action? I'm stretching you folks. Well, okay, whose income am I doubling? Okay, which particular person? Person one? Okay, so who is P? It's each successive person in the population. So what do I need to do to double everyone's income? I need to, this being Java, what do I need to do? I need to put a for loop. Thank you. I wish it weren't so, folks. Languages like Scala, like Python, functional languages could just do this so much nicer. And AnyLogic is aware of this and considering it in their future evolution. So I loop over each person in the population. What do I do for this person? For this person, P, I do what with their income? Okay, give them a raise. That's right. So their income becomes bigger by a factor of 2. Now, I'm going to write it this way, but those who are in my Java tutorial will know that there's actually a shorter way to write this. Do people remember that? Remember, nope, times equals 2. Remember that? That means income equals income times 2. But I don't want to scare people, so I'll leave it like this. I mean, it's perfectly legitimate to do it like this. Now, what I'm addressing, though, is also a previous question. Can I change people's parameters? Yes, I can change parameters. Generally, as a matter of hygiene, I don't like to do this much, because parameters often denote assumptions to make up front. And this kind of wipes away the memory of the original assumptions, but occasionally, you know, it's okay. Maybe you don't on this sort of occasional ad hoc basis, and okay. And I want to give the button a label like double incomes, or you know, perform raises, or something like that. Right? So now we have this button that raises everyone's salary. So now we can run the model, and you'll notice that I could do update income distribution to address Dawood's question. Okay, now we can perform raises. Okay, now let's go look at person 0 here, the very first person. Their income is, well, they're not doing too bad already, $4.4 million. But they're going to be happy campers, I suppose. So now I go back down. I just performed a raise, and now their income is $8.9 million. And Dawood, I'm going to update this distribution, and now it's shifted. So.
As an economist, I think it's nice to know that you just created inflation.
Okay. So point well taken. So we've just changed their income distributions. You know, if we perform raises several times here, quite a few times, sort of hyperinflation, and we do it. Okay, now, yeah, they've kind of gone off the. Well, I think there's some very, very small ones down here, but most have gone off the chart. Indeed, it was hyperinflation. So perform raise, perform raise, perform raise. Now we can do it. Perform raise, boom. So here it's getting sort of longer and longer tail to the right, which is not visible. Okay, so here we've seen computing histograms. We've seen updating parameters. We have seen adding buttons to customize the user interface. And I think with that, I'll just kind of push on for some concluding remarks with respect to this issue, if that's okay. Sure. Do you want me to provide it for you folks? Okay. Okay. Because it's an AnyLogic model, we can't have it circulate. Well, I don't know what AnyLogic's perspective is for this, because it's, part of it is owned by them, and so just keep it within the boot camp for now. I don't know. Are these in public domain, these models?
Which one?
Sample models?